Hello, and welcome to your guide to building an ancestral altar. This guide is pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I'd make a quick video to walk you through it and then to show you the ancestral altar that I made today. So on page 1, I start out describing the purpose of an altar, and then I also give 3 examples of intentions for ancestral altars. On page 2, I start out here with a quick disclaimer that this is an intuitive process, and there is no right or wrong way, per se, to build an altar. And I encourage you to follow your intuition. Next, I walk you through creating your altar's foundation and what you might need. So you can create an altar on a bookshelf or a side table. And then I recommend having a larger fabric that covers all or most of the surface of the altar. I personally like a small circle to ground the objects that are going to sit on top of the altar. And I also put in here that you could have a smaller wooden table or a little vessel to create dimension and some nooks and crannies to put sacred objects inside of. Next, I invite you to gather items for your altar. The first thing we're going to need is 3 to 4 plus objects to anchor in the intention of your altar. This could be so many things, but maybe photos, heirlooms, or any objects that you feel relate back to your intention. Next, we're going to give offerings to feed your intention, and this could be flowers, food, water, or really any kind of present. We're also going to need a purification tool, which could be Palo Santo, mugwort, eucalyptus spray, or anything that you like to use. And then finally, we'll need a candle or incense to consecrate the altar. In page 3, I walk you through step by step how to build your ancestral altar. We begin by purifying your space and then creating the foundation of your altar, which is placing the larger piece of fabric and perhaps the smaller circle or fabric on top. Next, we put down the anchor objects, or the 3 to 4 objects that anchor the intention of your altar. Then we're going to present your offerings to feed the intention of your altar. Then in step 5, you're going to speak your intention for the altar out loud for your healed ancestors to receive. After that, you're going to consecrate the altar by lighting a candle or some incense. And then I really recommend spending a few minutes to take in the goodness of what you've created and really savor it. Finally, I like to close out the ceremony with a word or a phrase, like "let it be so" or "thank you." I included one more page here that talks about disassembling the altar. So I personally think it's fine to leave the altar up for a few hours or even a couple of days, as long as things don't start to rot. And then I would say it's important to ritually dispose of your offerings. So this can mean composting them or returning them back to a natural environment where they won't hurt the wildlife there, like the birds. Finally, I included some contact information. This is my Instagram handle. I would love to see any altars that you're creating, so please feel free to tag me. This is my website and my email address if you run into any questions. Okay, now I'd like to share with you the altar that I made today. So this is it. This is my ancestral altar that I created today. I'll start out describing the objects I used to ground the altar. And I'll begin with this sweet Polaroid that I printed out of my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother as a child. Right next to it is a photo of my mother, me, and my daughter. I decided to pull a card from the Archetypes deck, and I chose the Siren, which I love because one of my earliest memories is my grandmother telling me stories of mermaids from the Philippines. Inside the pyramid are 2 rings. The silver ring with the pearl belonged to my grandmother, and I love the pearl because it brings us back to the ocean, which is a very important part of this lineage. Right next to it is a child's heart ring that my mother gave to me and I used to wear as a kid. Behind the rings is a golden wing, which symbolizes Heron, who is our psychopomp on this lineage. Behind this, I have a book, Life, Death, and Magic, 2,000 Years of Southeast Asian Ancestral Art. And I was inspired to add this book because of the spirit of the Siren card, which invites us to explore things that other people consider taboo. I also have my drum and my drum beater behind that because this lineage loves to drum. To feed this altar today, I chose these beautiful yellow blooming flowers, which these ancestors in particular love. They love happy yellow flowers. And I also added a plantain there on the right because my grandmother loved plantains. She made them every day. And I also added that cup of water there with the flowers inside to feed the altar. I consecrated the altar today with incense and fire. The incense is frankincense and myrrh. And as you can see, I have a skeleton, a skull candle here, as well as several tea lights to consecrate the space. So that's it. That's my ancestral altar for today. Sending you goodness, resource, and abundance. Thank you. Salamat.